What's up, everybody? Welcome. We're live on YouTube, Haberman and MIDDLEKAUFF. I'm Guy, that's John. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to the podcast, great. We appreciate it. Leave us a review. In your review, leave a question. Rumor is we might get back to a mailbag, 5 stars, and then leave a question in your review on Apple Podcast, and we will answer it. It is Sunday evening, and it's time, John, for a Tito's toast. You know, I'm not sure I got one tonight, so I'll let you go first.
I have one because I think this guy is the best coach in the country that consistently goes 5-7. His teams are feisty. They play hard. And I always appreciate when you go for 2 at the end of the game to attempt to win it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
When you got nothing going for you in terms of your season. And Justin Wilcox, former Boise State Bronco, is how we all first found out about that name. Has gone on, bounced around different places with Sark, and now he's the head coach of Cal, who is just not good, but they're not terrible, and had a chance to win the game, went for 2. Play didn't even come remotely close.
Not close. It was bad. 2 guys in the same spot.
I do appreciate the 2-point play. Nothing like losing 50-49. It's just as us,
to USC at home.
To USC
like
home.
You had a full house, right? Big crowd. Trojans big them out.
Another cheers. Pat Hill got his name in the Ring of Honor. Fresno State, I watched that entire game. Just crazy. UNLV's actually sneaky pretty good. You cannot lose on Pat Hill night, and they almost did in devastating Pat Hill fashion. And they got a pick to seal the game. Jeff Tedford, it just looks like he's headed for another 10-11 win season as a Fresno State head coach.
Yep, pretty incredible. UNLV had a drop. Did you see the drop touchdown they had? Hit the dude in the face at the end of the game.
But, it went right through his hand.
Box score just calls that a defensive stand, John. So, yep, Tito's toast. We're sponsored by our friends at Tito's Handmade Vodka. For whatever reason you drink, emotional highs or emotional lows, Tito's Handmade Vodka, that's the go-to. Holiday season is coming up. Halloween coming up. And, you know, it's you show up to a party holding a couple bottles of Tito's. You show up to a party dressed as a Tito's. You're a win. You're a winner. So distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas, 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly. A little Tito's and water and lime. That's Tito's favorite drink. Little Tito's and soda. I had a couple of those on Thursday night. Little Tito's Mule, always a go-to. Some ginger beer. No frills, no flavors, no fancy labels, just the good stuff. Tito's.
You get a lot of trick-or-treaters at your house?
Get a fair amount of trick-or-treaters at the house, yeah. You're about to find out.
What candy you guys go with?
You know, just the grab bag, like the bag you buy. It's like Hershey's or whatever brand that it's got 17 different. I have no desire. I don't need to be that house gives away full bars. I loved that house when I was a kid, but I do not care.
Yeah. Are you guys part of Neighborhood or Neighbor or whatever the app is that gets updated?
I do. I have it, but someone told me to get it, and I just want to get off it. So
yeah,
next door.
Next door. That's what it is. Yeah.
It's always just like I'm giving away scooters. I'm like, all right. John, Tito's toast to Joey Burr, as they call him in the Natty. 28-32 against the San Francisco 49ers. At one point, he completed 1 million straight passes in what was the 49ers' 3rd straight loss of the season. The number 30 was a popular number offensively for the Niners early in the year. Now the number 17 has become their number, which is bad because that's how many points they score, and that's about half.
My favorite part of this conversation is like, this just shows you need to get a Joe Burrow to win big in the league. It's like, we had no shit. How did they get Joe Burrow? Oh, they drafted number 1 overall. Yeah.
Right. And by the way, when you draft number 1, every 8 years you get a Joe. Every 7 years on average, there's a Joe Burrow. Maybe.
So you got to be yeah. Yes, the 49ers, like basically every team in the league without Mahomes. I think the Ravens probably feel pretty good about Lamar. It'd be a short list. It'd be a short list. Would take that individual. He was his struggles early in the season. Clearly, the calf is fine. That looked like the guy that put Ed Ogeron on the map, didn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that guy is MVP level player. I mean, he's just an elite, dominant. I'm the best fucking player on this field. I'm going to kick your ass, Steve Wilks. Hey, Steve, where are you up there? Looking monotone, not moving? I'm going to kick your ass every play. Hey, Steve, every play. 75 first downs. We're going to break an NFL record.
I thought last week maybe Kirk Cousins might have just played the best game against the Niners defense we'll see all year. And statistically, it's going to hold up. Cousins towards ACL today. His Achilles. Statistically, it's going to hold up. But, I mean, that game that Burrow just put forth was every bit as good, if not better, than what Kirk Cousins did last week. And at some point, you're like, boy, we're just playing surgical quarterbacks, or are we ripe for surgery? They get sliced and diced. I mean, you said it. How many first downs did they finish with? 29 or something like that for Cincinnati?
Yeah.
They weren't that good on third down, but they hardly had third downs. Statistically, they weren't that good on third. I mean, they were like 3 of what I don't remember. It wasn't as good percentage. 3 of 8 on third down. They only had 8 third downs, 29 first downs.
Well, exactly. Why does the third down percentage doesn't matter if you're converting it in Canadian football terms, right? Which the other thing is just thinking about that Minnesota game.
Yeah.
Thank God Justin Jefferson wasn't playing. Would have been worse. They can't cover receivers. Obviously, Jamar Chase, an awesome player. He had 10 for 100. But little Higgins sighting today. So I just think that Joe Mixon, who people early in the season were acting like, remember this offseason, they made him take a pay cut. Maybe he's just kind of trending toward the running back, like his career's peaked. He's trending the wrong way. I think you trucked Greenlaw today. Trucked him. He looked like, hey, guys, I'm from kind of up the road. All my high school coaches are here. I'm going to dominate you. That offense, like that crew of guys, that crew of Mixon, Chase, Joe, and Higgins, and their O-line coach, we're just like, we are going to kick your ass, Steve. We're going to kick your ass. The 49ers, when they were 5-0, felt like they were a heavyweight fighter. Like they got in the ring and they were playing like fucking Chuck Liddell. Like, it was a one-hitter quitters. We're going to knock you out early and we're going to set the tone. And last week, I wouldn't say Minnesota necessarily out-toughed them from the start. They just kind of out-schemed them. Their defense definitely was physical. Today was, we're shoving you around. We're shoving you around.
Yeah.
And I do think when the Niners get shoved around on defense, it kind of just carries over to the feel of the game. It feels like like a pitching staff getting lit up or whatever, even if you're in the game. It doesn't feel at halftime. Watching that game felt like they were down 30-7. Obviously, what was the halftime score?
It was 14-10.
14-10, but it felt like a double-digit score.
Could have been 13 if IU could cut that ball off his face. But that was a Moody moment that we didn't get. We didn't get to see Moody line up there.
They also got a fumble late on the last, when they were driving in.
Yep.
Which saved them because there's not a soul that didn't think they were scoring.
Baby zone. And it was even Romo said, don't run it here. I mean, don't throw it here. You got to run it here. And then they throw and the ball comes out and the whistle blows, but the Niners were right there. So clear recovery. But if they can't stop, here's one of the problems, right? If they can't stop the run, then they can't the Niners feast on being physical. They feast on putting you in third and long, and then their pass rush can get off. But they're the ones that are ending up in all these 3rd and 6s. The opponent is not ending up in the 3rd and 7s, right? Like that's part of it. Part of the reason you're not getting these pass rushes home because you're not ending up in 3rd and long. So you can't out physical, which means you can't intimidate, which means you can't wear the other team down. And when they can run the ball, when the Niners opponent can run the ball, the Niners can't wear out the other defense. And then you're playing from behind, and they're a little quicker, but they're not a quick strike offense. We know they're 0-39 or 0-37 or whatever Kyle is now when trailing by 8 points or more in the fourth quarter. I think it affects everything when they cannot stop the run, it affects everything. It affects the mood of the game, but it affects their ability to control the game on the other side of the ball because they're getting like think about this, John. The Niners got the ball with like 13 minutes left in the fourth quarter on the drive where they scored a touchdown, right? But they took 5 minutes off the clock to score that drive. The Bengals they were not in hurry up. The Bengals get the ball. The Bengals start wearing the clock out. And you just realize if you're not going to stop the run and they're going to score, it's just, you got no shot. 13 minutes goes by really fast with this Niners team because they take they're going to maximize like 2 possessions in a quarter, and they're not going to slow the opponent down who can pick up third downs and run the football. So quarters go by like that with this team.
I feel against the Cowboys, when they came out and knocked them out early defensively, Greenlaw was playing at Fred Warner's like all-pro level.
Yeah.
And it feels like these last couple of weeks, he's kind of in circles sometimes, just especially in the passing game. No, but I'm saying today there were a couple times he's running one way, they're catching him in misdirection. Feels like they're kind of exploiting him right now. And like you said, when you don't know the pass is coming, and I know Armstead had a couple sacks today, but you just watch some of these earlier games, and Reddick or whoever are just constantly making Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. You don't feel Nick as much in these games, and it gets to the situation of the game. They can't just tee off. And I just think it feels like they don't know what's coming, and not everyone's on the same page now, week in, week out. And it reflects, it doesn't bother me that he said what's obvious. I've always been an advocate of saying, if it's blue outside, say the fucking sky is blue. We live in this society where everyone just is so afraid to say what's really going on. And it just can be just such a fake world, right? In football, though, because of the impact it has on, just because you're playing the New England Patriots, you wouldn't say, God, this is Bill's shittiest team we've ever seen on tape since I've been coaching against them for 20 years. You wouldn't say that, even though everyone's thinking it. But last week when Kyle said what he said, and the way it came off, and really that 24-hour period of him saying it, him doubling down, Wilks coming out and saying it, Forrester getting asked about it, John Lynch being asked about it when he went, it was crazy. You do not see that in the NFL. Even though everyone's thinking it, like, God, this Wilks thing is getting a little weird. Totally understand everyone thinking about it. There's a way in football that it's just not worth it, because then it becomes
the truth has to happen inside of the building. It doesn't need to happen. My analogy is in college, it's different because your boss is the booster in college, right? And you got to satisfy those people. That's not how the NFL is.
So I theorized, just especially as the week went on, this has to be his players and their words last week after the game, I think, backed this up, that Bosa was saying, we're not used to playing like this, right? And he wasn't even talking about that specific play, like we're blitzing more now. Fred made some comments. My theory was simply that if Kyle knows that his big dogs on defense, you don't fire players, and I wouldn't fire any of those players for Wilks. That's not what I'm advocating for. But I'm just, my point being, you kind of want to make a stand publicly, like, hey, guys, I totally understand. I'm on your side. Which, if that theory is correct, that's still pretty fucking nuts. Like, that reflects this team's internally got some major issues with a unit that was viewed as lock top 5 defense in the league coming into the season. And now
coming into the season 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So it's just, were they band-aiding a little bit because maybe some of the opponents, right? You get a couple back-to-back weeks of the Rams and the Cardinals. You can look a little bit better than you actually are. And then you start playing better teams. You start giving yards, beat the PJ Walker, and then you get lit up by Cousins and Burrow. It makes you look in the mirror. Like, yeah, we've lost games before as a team, but it didn't feel like we're the reason. We're the unit that always carried us. And now we're getting fucking smoked. And now our defensive coordinator got put on blast publicly, which it's just very rare. It's not rare in football. It happens. It's usually as teams are imploding, not for a team that was in full control of everything.
Yeah.
And now you got to ask yourself, okay, it seems inconceivable because it's not like they have some DeVito on their staff. Do you think he's 100% safe this bye week? Because historically in football, you see coordinators get fired during the bye week, right? Yep. In the NFL, for sure.
I mean, it feels crazy, but if you asked, is he 100% safe? I don't think this is a team that has not been afraid to make dramatic trades. Would they do something that dramatic? Who do you have? Daniel Bullock.
How do you also make a dramatic trade right now? Like, unless you get Aaron Donald, who am I trading a high pick for on this team right now? Let's just take a deep breath, right? I think that's what would scare me. I hear what you're saying because Kawakami was tweeting like they're planning on going big. I think we need to kind of just take a step back, take a deep breath, and huddle up Monday morning and just reassess everything before we just throw out some draft capital, right? Last year, no.
I don't know. I mean,
you've spent
so much money on this team. You're so all in on this team. Your talent still like when I look at the group.
I'm just saying I'm very careful about who I, shoot my shot for. Where
agree.
before I might have just
desperate. But the beauty is they could use help in a lot of, like, you went and got in. If you're like, they gave up a 1 and a 2 for Patrick Surtain, you'd be like, God, that's expensive. But is he immediately become their best corner? I mean, Mooney Ward's really good.
Is who's dialing up the coverages? The guy in the box that feels like he doesn't know what he's doing?
Yeah, I mean, they do have a lack of elite players making elite plays right now. But it's not because they lack elite players. Hargrave was dominating early in the season. Bosa had the sweet pass rush that pushed Burrow up, and then Armstead got one of his 2 sacks on the game. Mooney ends up one-on-one against really good receivers to bad results. I thought one of the most eye-opening plays today was when he had the pass breakup. Was it the first play of the second half? They went like back shoulder up top to Chase, and he broke it up. And like the Bengals sideline was going crazy, like, throw the flag, throw the flag. Bengals like, fuck it, run it back, do it again, and they got the flag on the second one. And the flag
wasn't it like in baseball? Isn't it like in baseball? If I throw the pitch I want to throw and he barely touches it, you just call it again. I bet he won't touch it 2 times in a row.
You can't do it twice.
You probably could have called that play. Just they probably didn't call that play enough. I would just stop.
If you told me Jamar Chase, when I checked the box score, you said it was 10 for 100. If you told me it was 17, like I think it was 11 or 12, no more than 13 targets. He could have had 17 targets. It would have been fine. But hey, why? Joe Mixon's breaking off runs. I mean, there's really no reason, right? There's only so many plays you can run. 10 for 100 is pretty damn good. They do not. It doesn't feel like one of the most. I mean, is it the most expensive defense? One of the most expensive defenses is. And look, but not to excuse the offense, we can get to them too. But
here's the thing: that game. Because I've seen some people in the chat, and I would imagine if you just went on social media, there is going to be, this isn't New York, this isn't Philly, half the fan base. But everyone take a deep breath. You lose 3 games. Okay, maybe half would be.
I don't think
let's use 10, 20%. There's a higher percentage than the Northeast. They'll be like, everyone chill.
I would think that too. Just look, so far what I've seen today is nothing but freak out.
Okay, yeah, because anyone has to agree. If you're a good team, a 3-game losing streak in the NFL is very alarming. I don't give a shit what your schedule is.
Yeah, especially the last 2 games, right? The Browns game, road game, rain, missed the kick that could have won it. Fine. But the last,
what'd Kyle say last week? We got beat. And he was like, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You kind of got worked. You got really worked.
He said the same thing again today. He said the same thing again after this game.
But you know what the difference is? Which is kind of sad about Cousins getting the Achilles, because they're 4-4. They actually might have been a wild card team. When the dust settled, they might end up, with Jefferson comes back, been able to win 9-8, and been like the 7th seed. Definitely not inconceivable, right? With him at quarterback. They're a good enough team. This team is like, when rolling, a Super Bowl contender, right? Everyone puts them kind of in the top 5 or 6 relative before they always start slow. Going into a season, like, get ready for the Bengals, get ready for the Bengals. What'd they do last year? Kick the shit out of the Bills, right there toe-to-toe with the Chiefs at Arrowhead. What'd they do the previous year? Beat the fucking Chiefs. We're winning in the Super Bowl. Like, this is a team that you should be looking in the mirror for. And you start, as the game's going on, and rightfully so, Romo, there's Lou Amorono. Well, they got a big-time coordinator on defense because, like you, their offensive staff is their head coach. That's what, he spends his time. Their defensive coordinator, they're very, very comfortable with. I heard Schrager say this week he was very, very disappointed. They went with Gannon over him to be the Arizona coach. Like, that was the final 2. I mean, he's clearly a high-end now, several years of just, that team is fucking bringing it.
Did Romo say he almost got the Giants job, that Daboll got the Giants job over him?
I didn't hear that.
Romo said he almost got a job, but he said last year, so maybe it was the Arizona job.
It was Arizona. He was in the final 2, but Schrager knows him and said I think he was hurt. Like, he thought he had gotten the job. And you watch him, like, that's what a head coaching candidate, been in the league now a couple decades, his unit, just players change, doesn't matter, haven't skipped a beat. And that's a huge, glaring difference of the 2 teams, right? Because the Niners statistically, offensively, were moving the turnovers. It's just their defense is dramatically worse. Like, they lose Jesse Bates, a dude they had franchised, goes to the Falcons. Like, fuck, I'm watching them. Obviously, 91's still really good, but they got random dudes, and they're just making plays.
They have multiple second-year guys in their secondary. They had a rookie out there today.
The other thing is you can give up yards. I think the most overrated thing in the NFL can be yards. It's really about points. Well, what happened? They created some turnovers, right? Their middle linebacker kind of went Fred Warner, made 2 awesome plays. That's part of being a good defense. It's like, yeah, you're going to go 80 on me, get to the red zone, see what happens. We'll pick you off. We'll cause a fumble. We'll get a strip sack. We'll as Mike Lombardi says, it's a 4-point swing play, right? The difference between a touchdown and a field goal will hold you. That's the 49ers are supposed to be the equals with them. And right now that team is dramatically better.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, dramatically.
I would say specific to the coaching staffs, 3 weeks in a row, it's Stefanski against Wilks, Kyle against Schwartz. Niners lost. It's Wilks against O'Connell. Kyle against what's his name from the Dolphins.
I'd even do the quarterback. I think the last 2 weeks you can do the coordinator quarterback.
Yeah, coordinator, but it's like it's elite coordinators on both sides of the ball the last 2 weeks, right? Brian Flores, Kyle against Brian Flores. Today, Kyle against Omo.
I just call him Coach Lou.
Coach Lou. And Steve Wilks against. I mean, it's, Taylor Dickinson was texting me. He's like, 3 weeks in a row, it's Zach Taylor, O'Connell, Stefanski. Like those guys all do the same. It's like kind of the same stuff. It's Kyle guys you're going up. They're not all Kyle guys, but and they've really struggled with it.
Well, I know this. If I was a diehard Bengals fan today, I'd be walking around tonight like the way Niners fans were walking around for the first 5 weeks. My team just fucking hits you in the teeth. What Pat Hill said, football is about this. You hit people right on, 2 individuals hitting on. And the team that usually loses the game, this is always this thing, is the first one to flinch. And the Niners, over the last several years, have made you flinch. And obviously, offensively, quarterback, it's not as much about flinching. It's about, I would say the Bengals clearly out physical them, and they obviously have Burrow to really kind of put the nail in the coffin. But it's just, that's how the Niners are supposed to play, and I don't know where it's gone. And I do think it reflects what we witnessed Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays. I'm not trying to act, and when I'm being critical of Kyle, I don't think Kyle's a village idiot. I'm not acting like, but anyone arguing that Kyle's Mr. always taking the arrows himself, like it's not really his thing, which is fine. But to just shit on a guy, there's only a couple outcomes. You either don't believe in him anymore. Your players are starting to question it. You felt it, because it'd be an easy one to go like, listen, that's something me and Steve will talk about. We brought him here for a reason. It was a long season. We've hit bumps in the road. We'll be fucking fine. That is not the way he did it. And I heard Lynch is like, well, you got to listen. There was context. I understand. Everyone knows the context. But even John knows that's not the way coaches talk in modern day with social media. And Kyle didn't hesitate.
Well, think about Steve Wilks started his press conference the next day, John. Didn't get asked the question. He started with it before it even got addressed. A play that happened at the end of a second quarter. I know it was a big play. I don't want to spend all time on it. It happened at the end of the other thing. They played 2 more quarters after that play.
I've been thinking about that all week. We acting like that was the final, the 2-point play against USC that lost USC the game. Right. Like that's all you'd be talking about. There were 16 seconds left going into the halftime. What
another 30 minutes after that.
So to me, the more and more we talk, I'm kind of crystal clear. I wonder if Kyle knows his guys are turning on it. Like their belief in this guy is not what it has been, and he has to try to figure it out.
Yeah, you might be right. I mean, somebody in the chat just said they're rattled. I think they are in a way, and I think that's like they are not one. Fred Warner's like, we played hard today. I watch them outside of the play where they all gave up because they thought there was an offsides and the Bengals scored a touchdown, which is, guys, if there's no whistle, you keep playing.
What about the Burrow fumble where the offensive lineman actually picked up a fumble, started running? Why did he not get credit for just taking off? Is he not allowed to run with the ball?
I don't. Maybe they thought Burrow was down incorrectly.
Pretty clearly, he was not.
It was a forward. I don't know. Can you advance a forward fumble? I know only the fumbler, like in the last 2 minutes or on 4th down, can do that. I don't know if you can advance a forward fumble. Anybody?
We have to get Ed Hockley on the line. I'm not that one.
Gene, but
Terry.
But there's something is. I mean, it's obvious something's off with them. They've lost 3 in a row. but it feels like it goes beyond just they're not making the plays on the field, right? And you do. We'll get to Brock, but it does feel like the whole operation's a little rattled right now. They're not used to playing from behind. They're not. Then you look up and, I mean, they back-to-back 3-and-outs in the second half after the Bengals had the ball first, and then, they made multiple stops, had opportunities to move the ball, turn it over in the red zone, got a stop after the turnover. That's the part that's a little crazy. The negative stuff with this team is so negative right now, and it's like correct. Like the things they're doing wrong are backbreaking. It's like can't stop the run, red zone turnovers. But then they do other things that get lost. You like, what is going on between the opposite ends of the spectrum? It's crazy.
Well, let's use the Steelers as an example. Their defense, a lot of that game, it's ugly. They're down, and their defense is just keeping them in it. And it just feels like this is just a big time NFL defense. Eventually they break. But the reason they break is because their quarterback, whether it's Kenny Pickett or whether he gets injured and Trubisky comes in, it's most games they're going to be under 150 yards passing, right? And that's understandable when you're a big-time defense, and the Niners had a lot of those in the Garoppolo era where Garoppolo would just struggle to get to like 175, and it would just be really ugly, and they'd either win or lose it, but it'd be, 21-17 or, a weird score like 19-16 or whatever, right? It would just stay relatively close. Now that their offense can move the ball and easily get to 300 yards passing in a given game or 250 plus no problem and generate big explosive plays, if their defense was playing like they used to play, this game wouldn't have felt like it felt, right? Until the end, where back-to-back games, it's unraveled basically in the end of the fourth quarter or in the fourth quarter with the turnovers. But it's getting to that point because they're just on the ropes taking these blows and they don't know how to get out off. And that their team, as you said, the vibe of it comes from them, even when things are awesome, like scoring points with Ayuk's and Debo and Kittle. It's always their defense. Like, holy shit, did Greenlaw and Hufanga just kill that guy? And when that doesn't happen, it has a different vibe. That's how Harbaugh's teams dominated. That's how Kyle's teams have consistently dominated, even over this Purdy era where their offense has been much more explosive. Because I don't know what to say or do beside, like, the players are not changing. This is their squad, right? And they've paid a lot of money and invested a lot in these guys. And it does not look good. And it's been 2 weeks in a row. It's one thing to lose to the Bengals. It's another thing to lose like they lost today, just getting thoroughly outplayed. If the game would have been 8 quarters, they would have never stopped getting first downs. To me, today was less about even the points and just how they just kept moving the ball, and there was just no stopping it. The only way you're going to stop it if someone fumbled. Someone had to fumble because Burrow wasn't going to throw a pick. It was just like, is someone going to fumble?
Yeah.
And even the Chase thing, it's like, it's definitely not a catch.
Well, it's definitely not, but he caught it, but it's just not an NFL catch, right? It's just not, he caught it, but it's not a catch.
Exactly. But that's what they needed lucky shit like that to happen. They weren't, they weren't, I don't know. It was just,
it would have been
a lot of guys.
Steal. Like they were in position for a minute, they were in position to steal a game, but you still would have walked out of there like, well, we did not tackle well in the first half, right?
I think one thing that has definitely changed is I remember during some of the Packer games with Devontae, he would have been one of the only guys in the league who could just consistently kind of get open on him and was just always wide open. It felt like sometimes at an NFL level, like you would be in college. And that's how the last couple of weeks have felt. Where are these guys? Well, there's no one in 5 yards of them. And some of it clearly, I think the one thing, and Romo kind of pointed this out at different times today, because Jamar is such an elite player, how much they utilize formations and put him on the line, put him back in bunches, motioning him. And it felt like they didn't know what to do. And then once he would break out his route, there would be some lost in translation of just no one's really around him. And just that, I mean, listen, if you just appreciate football, that catch he had toward the end of the game on the sideline is a thing of beauty. I mean, you're playing an elite player. So if your schemes aren't buttoned up, like he's going to beat you.
Double teamed.
Yeah, I'm saying if you're playing Sala or D'Amico's good, he might get 7 for 70, and it's just be like, tip our hat. Like, that's an elite player. He's going to get his. Today was just like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. This is a 10 for 100 with ease. This isn't, I don't even feel like I'm working that hard.
It didn't look like he was working that hard.
The Niners used to make guys work hard for their whatever their production is. And that to me is a big difference, right? Because a lot of guys get yards. It's if you just look around football, obviously this year actually feels like it's been a little down, but just in general, like it's never been easier to throw for 250 yards. Not all 200, like Derek Carr has a lot of 250, 300-yard games that do not look like Joe Burrow's 280-yard game, right? So there are differences on how things look. Yeah. That to me is pretty alarming because you won a lot of games with this group of players. This is the same team, right? It's why people were being harsh on Brian Johnson with the Eagles. Like, you have the exact same players. It's not like, well, they signed this Hufanga guy from the Bengals and it's Ward's first year, and Greenlaw was always a backup. He's never been a full-time starter. It's like, no, all these guys have been full-time starters now.
So, I mean, when that happens, like, I don't want to, we try not to just pile on the Wilks part of it, but when that happens, you ask the question, what part changed? If this was college, I know exactly what would happen. I think you and I talked about the other, and it might happen in the NFL, where it's like, we're going to hear one of these press conferences where Kyle's like, we've talked, Steve's going to go down to the field after the bye. Who's going to be coaching from the field? And that's usually like kind of the last ditch. Offensive coaches go to the booth from the field, and defensive coaches come from when things are bad. They always
pretty rare in the NFL midseason change.
Very rare. Happens in college all the time because like no one, like, all right, we're gonna, because it's just like message boards. Like I remember it happened at Utah when Troy Taylor was the OC there. After like 3 weeks, like, he's got to get up to the booth. They got to get. So they sent him to Whittingham. Sent him to the booth. What happened after that year? He left. And defense, it goes the other way. Defensive guys, it's like, well, I'm come down, look my guys in the eyes. I just need to be able to see them in the eyes. And I'll say this, like, I'm laughing about it.
6 years of guys on the field.
That is what these guys are used to, right? That is what Fred Warner is used to, is just being able to go talk to the DC.
6 straight years of the two bald-headed guys going fucking nuts on the sideline, dialing up defenses. I would say both guys were getting montages on social media, the YouTubes and NFL.com, of their sweet pump-up chest bumps. I mean, Saleh really got put on the map in 19 for doing that.
Is Saleh, I would say, if he was coaching on the booth? I mean, he is. But
getting interviews, but yeah, I mean, I think, and then DeMeco did the same, just reenacted it, and his defenses were better. And they both look, I mean, DeMeco literally did play in the league. Saleh looks like a former NFL player. And then he's got Wilks, who's just monotone up there. Which, again, this is a little message board, your mannerisms, but it's starting to reflect the fucking team, right? I don't need my offensive coordinator jumping up and down, right? That's not the way offense works. From Walsh to Andy to Kyle to McVay kind of is like that, but not today. But just in general, is that L on McVay's kid today?
On Jordan.
But overall, I do wonder if they went from, kind of, they say 0 to 60. They kind of went 60 down to 0. It feels like just the mood, because they've always had Chris Sarek, who's nuts, but the coordinator was always there going bananas. And now this guy's just up there just looking at his little pen and paper.
They were 5-0. They're 5-3. They were 5-0. Now the schedule got harder. They were 5-0. Now they're in second place in the division. Seattle scored. I'm sure you saw it.
I looked up and then I saw
38 seconds. Smith and Jigba scored with 38 seconds left to take the lead. I mean, devastating. That was like in real time, like a 15-minute stretch. It was just devastating for the Niners. They have a worse record than the Cowboys right now. Cowboys are 5-2. Niners are 5-3. They're going to hit their bye now, so the balance will even up. But I get a lot of people. I haven't seen it so much in the comments, but like tweet, just back and forth with people who are like, you guys thought, this is Kyle's offense. That's what it is. Wilks' defense. The reality is, it is all of it. It is the defense is not built to have a quarterback. Most aren't, but especially this one right now is not built to have a quarterback that doesn't turn it over. I remember several weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, Kawakami in a press conference asked Brock, what's the number? Is there a stat? Like, what's the number one stat you watch? Like, what and Brock's answer was like, well, the number one thing is protecting the football. That's the number one thing, which, but he's not. They are not only turning the ball over, John. The last 2 weeks, he has found the most devastating ways to throw interceptions. It's crazy. But before we
Baby's
talk
own
about
pick.
that, I want to get to this real quick. He hit his head hard on that last drive. And, when you watch TV, people always say, broadcasters always like, now I don't want to speculate. And then they're like, but boy, that looks like the ankle, I think that's just as we sit here on Sunday night, I think that might be something. Last time the concussion came up on the flight home, obviously there's no flight home. His head got slammed hard in the turf. He immediately grabbed. It's just something to monitor. I think that's something to watch here these next. And I don't, they're on a bye, so you get less detail because
they don't have to practice or put out a practice report.
I
do think they would have to announce if you went into the concussion protocol, though.
Okay.
Like if he started feeling symptoms.
Yeah. That's something to watch this week because he hit his head really hard on the ground.
Yeah, he got slammed.
And immediately grabbed it. It was on the third interception that wasn't a pick. He got hit low. And credit to Romo for seeing it. But
little higher when they tackled him than it wasn't below the knee. It was more thigh.
I didn't think it was a penalty, honestly.
We got a little lucky on that. I got a little lucky on that one.
Pretty crazy when they're like, that's the first Bengals penalty of the game. I'm like, I don't think that was a penalty, but who gets through a game without a penalty?
Yeah, I know this. I saw on Twitter, I don't know the person. I think it was on the the one section that just shows you random tweets.
For you.
Yeah, actually pretty good at knowing.
I actually spend more time on For You.
I agree. And this guy said, listen, all glad that Purdy's healthy, but no one can deny that we were all kind of intrigued and looking forward to the Sam Darnold, like seeing what it was going to look like with Kyle. And I do think there's an element of, the stat was well out there. And I think I saw Schefter say today that 25% of people that go into the protocol on Monday, I guess over the history of it, still play on Sunday. But, it trended. And then obviously we found out on Saturday that he was going to play. And maybe they felt good about it. Maybe it was just, I had some headaches that they had to put him in. It wasn't a bad why Kyle felt pretty confident talking about it on Monday. He immediately
felt better the next day is what he said.
Yeah. So, but, for a lot of the game, he's a much better athlete than anyone ever thought. Like his athleticism, he is, for example, they drafted Trey Lance as a runner. He's a dramatically better scrambler than Trey Lance. But I'm just saying they drafted a guy third overall to run around.
I always love when we dive back into the old world.
I'm not trying to shit on anybody. I'm just saying he is a much
feeling of the way it used to be.
Much better scrambler and mover. He really is. He's really pretty good.
Better playmaker.
He was great playmaker today. But there is no way to get around. I don't care if you're averaging 11 yards a pass, pushing the ball downfield, throwing remarkable dimes to Kittle over the middle of the field, Ayuk down the field. Like he was slinging it. He was not the problem for the majority of the game. Once you start turning the ball over, it's beyond a kick in the dick. It's why McCaffrey said last week, I lost the game. He fumbled like 5 minutes into the game. But in his mind, we're driving to the red zone and I fumble. It derails the whole game. Well, you're driving down. Were they down 7 and he throws the pick? Mitchell's not only wide open, as Tony Romo hit on it. When they do that kind of, and a couple times a day, and it might have been his limited, how much he was able to practice. I don't know. Looked a little rusty. On that play action boot, when the guy is open, you got to get rid of it immediately because it gives them every step you take to roll diminishes the opening in the play, especially because it's usually to a shorter side. So you have less room to deal with. And that play, he was pretty open for about 3 or 4 steps. And by the time he threw it, clearly a elite play by the defensive player, right? That's NFL linebacking. To tip the ball to yourself, full speed. That's
from point blank range,
awesome,
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just right it's stupid, but it's also on Purdy. Like I hate it when it's a little freaky. Well, when we really, if he's 2 or 3 steps getting rid of the ball, the linebacker's not there. The reason the linebacker's in front of his face is because he's honestly too close to Mitchell, right? He had run pretty far on that play.
It almost looked like the play wasn't working, right?
I think I saw Barrows say like that play was a disaster from the jump. It definitely had a weird vibe to it.
It feels like Kyle, with Debo's injury, Shanahan has pushed a lot of dual back plays into this offense that we haven't seen before with Elijah and with Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
What you got?
Nothing. I was just throwing it up there.
You just wanted to put up bearing the lead and Moody had a day?
Their kicker's sweet too. That was the other thing. I was like, oh, this gets in a close game. This kid ain't missing. Yeah, I know he missed, but it just felt like once he missed and then he drilled it, I was like, I think that's his one miss for like 3 weeks.
You see the Joey Sly? Remember Joey Sly, the former Niner kicker? He drilled a 61-yarder today for the football team. He's the what did Nance call him? The Commodores. He's the Commodores kicker. Joey Sly.
Oh yeah. I just it's part of playing the position though, because it'd actually be pretty easy if you're Purdy's dad or a Purdy fan to defend him. And part of playing the position too. It gets like you get the head coach and the quarterback probably get more credit than they deserve and definitely get more blame. This one's kind of an easy because I think Wilks is going to take the majority and deserved. But in these tight games, part of what Joe Burrow brings to the table and Jamar Chase is like, you know what? Our defense can have an off game. We got to win this thing 45-42. We'll fucking do it.
Yeah.
Higgins, Joe, you guys ready?
Right.
I'm ready.
Well, that's what it looked like early. And it was, oh no, did the Niners have that? I mean, I know they had it in the bag against the Steelers. Do they have that in the bag?
When they're blowing out the Cowboys. Okay, it's like Joe Burrow's here playing.
Well, when the other team can't score, it's a lot easier to score 35. To score 35 in a game where the other team scores 35, all your possessions really matter.
Well, it's also how do usually a lot of blowouts happen. And when you score 35 plus in the NFL, you're going to get a couple turnovers. But like I'm looking at the box score for the Chiefs game, they had 2 picks, 3 fumbles. It's not like the Broncos scored 45 points. I mean, they're struggling to score. They're getting a million turnovers. But the 49ers, when you're turning the ball over, obviously at the end of the game, it's just devastating because you're not going to have the possessions. But you just can't afford to throw picks. And this gets back to the Jimmy Garoppolo thing. It just can't happen. And in tight games where you can throw a pick when you're up 30 points against the Dallas Cowboys in the second half, no one even notices. You throw a pick down 7, it's the reason that stat just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. I had zero faith. I had faith last week. I'm like, okay, I could see something going down before we found out he was concussed. This week, I would say by the middle of the second half, I was like, I just don't see it. I had no faith in the second half the 49ers are going to win the football game. None. Never. Honestly, there were very little points today during the 60 minutes of football, however long that is in real time, right? 3 hours, 10 minutes, 3 hours, 20 minutes. I thought the 49ers were winning this football game.
Especially once they got down multiple scores. Because, like, they score. But, when you're down 14, you got to score 3 times to win the game, not 2 times. So they score. All right, they're within 7. Cool. You still need 2 more scores.
Unless Kyle does,
you got to stop
2,
Cincinnati
twice. He ain't doing it,
right? Unless he goes for 2, yeah. Which I
meant go for 2 on the first touchdown. You know how you're supposed to do that?
Yeah. It crossed my mind today, like because then you can go for 2 again later if you don't get it, right?
Yeah,
it crossed my mind.
Or
today.
Just kick the field goal to win it.
Would today be the day?
Kick the extra point.
It crossed my mind
today.
Would today be the day? Yeah. I want to get to something else on Brock, but let me hit a couple super chats real quick. Brad gave $20 just to say fire Wilks. Gammon a 5 spot. As disappointing as this game was, as disappointing as walking up to your front door in the rain with both arms full of groceries, only to realize that your keys are in your back pocket.
I hate that move.
Yeah. Gage said, looking at the schedule, 11-6 at optimal at this point. Probably losing the Ravens, Eagles, and split with the Seahawks. Thoughts? Doesn't feel like we're sweeping the Seahawks at this point.
I've gotten several texts. Is 8-9 on the table? Are we trending in the wrong direction?
Well,
feel like an 8-9 team. Feel like an 8-9 win team. Who decent will they beat like this? Another group text. Very similar. I mean, it's hard. 3. You always overreact to a loss. 3 losses in a row in the NFL. What percentage of the season is it? Right? I mean, 16 games every 2. I'm not a mathematician here, but I mean, we're talking 12% of the season.
Was it raining pretty hard in the Steelers-Jags game today?
Yes.
Because it looked like I didn't watch any of that game. Obviously, we will before the Jags-Niner game, but it looked like Trevor Lawrence was pretty efficient.
He was good.
Just looking at the box score.
One thing that really stood out, you lose 13% or 3 straight games, that's 17% of your season.
17% of your season is
17% of your season. One thing the Jags showed today, they went into Pittsburgh. TJ Watt's ball. I mean, their defense looks fantastic. It's ugly. It's raining. And they were just in complete control. They knocked out Kenny Pickett. They're just in complete control of the game. People will be like, oh, there's some calls. Listen, ETN made a sweet play. Trevor Lawrence just looks good. What's their record right now? 6-2?
6-2, yeah.
And they're on a bye as well?
Yep. Yes, they are.
The best part for the 49ers, the Jags, I'd say don't need the game, but what if the Jags are thinking number 1 seed?
After the Chiefs lost this week?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's 6-2. You're in first place in the conference.
Yeah.
Like, they don't need the game clearly to win their division, but they do when you want more home games than not in the playoffs.
Another good offensive coach and good quarterback for Steve Wilks that week. Glass City, 10 spot. If the issues on this team are systematic in nature, how do you fix it? The entire team looked like shit. Every facet of the team sucks. Is this team having a midseason collapse? What's up with Brock? I want to follow up on Brock. I mean, getting Trent Williams and it'll be really interesting. Is Debo healthy for Jacksonville for that game, or is it Tampa when he's going to be healthy? Is Trent Williams good to come back against Jacksonville? Because winning games at whatever percentage you are without those two, clearly they can't elevate the other stuff well enough to overcome it. I'm not saying those guys being back guarantees you anything, because it doesn't. But at this point, the best thing they can do is get healthy, other than add an immediate starter at the trade deadline. If Steve Wilks had the adjustments to make, would have made him this week, would have made him at halftime, would have made him last week, would have, So there's always adjustments to make. They can get better, but
I know we got lit up a couple times
at
the end of the game. I thought it was kind of over. I think for the most part, Jalen Moore's been fine. The Trent Williams has not been. That was not the issue.
But you can't lose one of the best offensive linemen in the league.
I totally agree. I'm not saying that. Now, can Trent Williams, could he, kind of like the running back / safety for Utah? Does he have 15 reps at him at defensive tackle to stop the run? Can he stop the run, guy?
Not a bad idea.
Actually, Whittingham's doing it. Like, can Wilks?
Didn't do it.
What do you think? What do you think that conversation would go like? Do you think we can borrow Trent for about 10 plays? Kyler's like, you're fired.
Kyle might be like, hey man, if Kyle was the head coach, he might do the DC. He might do it. But are we rethinking Brock at this point? Back-to-back games with awful turnovers. I'll tell you, complicated game for Brock, I think, in a weird way. Now, you might argue red zone turnover and then crunch time turnover, nothing complicated about it. Those are losing plays, and they were losing plays. But Brock did so many things before that are the things that top 15 quarterbacks do. Like, he consistently does the things that top 15 quarterbacks do. And then the last 2 weeks, he's had the kinds of interceptions that backup quarterbacks throw. It's really, for me, it's really difficult. The level that he is like on opposite ends of the spectrum with somebody in the chat, I lost it here, said with his hero plays. And maybe that's part of it, right? Maybe over time you watch a guy and you realize he tried, like Romo, he's got too much hero in him, and it's going to wipe out some of the other stuff that he does. I don't think there's any question. Like, I'm not rethinking whether or not Brock is an NFL level, like true. Like, to me, he's got still a lot of the things that make a top 15 quarterback, because he just does things consistently well that most quarterbacks don't do, like throwing with anticipation. Romo today at times was like pretty impressed with some of the list of excellent throws he made in this game is actually pretty long. Like, he made a lot of really good plays, but none of that matters if you can't walk that fine line of not turning it over while you're trying to make special plays. And 2 weeks in a row, I mean, the second one last week was him trying to make a special play. And then he went back to it this week and threw a first down pass to Kittle. I mean, nobody throws a lollipop over the middle while rolling the opposite direction quite like him. So I'm not rethinking Brock, the starting quarterback at this point, but are you?
No. One knock on Brock Purdy as a prospect was turnovers. He had 33 interceptions in 46 games. And I think he had 17 his last 2 years, where now part of it is Iowa State. Hero ball was something that I had heard a lot from just asking scouts that went through there, like, what's your thoughts on him? And I think, when does the hero ball come up? Not in the middle of the game, when it's tie game, when they're down 7 points in the second quarter. It's happened now twice. Now it's hard to know how to value last week when he, did he feel completely fine and it kicked in when he got on the plane? It's hard to know, but obviously post concussion, he was pretty terrible. But then today, same thing. It's, when did he start falling apart? He tried to kind of make some crazy plays. Crazy plays would be strong, but he just made some back-breaking plays. The one, I mean, scrambling out toward Elijah Mitchell. Is he confused whether he thinks he could run for it himself? I don't know. That's what hesitated. And the other one, the pick across the middle that did count as your classic. That's a scrub touch. That can't happen.
That feels like the worst pick he's had in the last 2 weeks. What do you think? The second one today?
I'd be interested to know what he was supposed to do on the first pick. I wonder if that's more his fault or not on him at all. I would it kind of leans a little on him, because you let that guy get much closer. Isn't that just when disaster happens? When you hold on to the ball scrambling in the red zone, when you're not, he's not Josh Allen or any of these guys physically. So it's not like he's going to run over guys. It's one thing when there's open grass. He's proven he can run for first downs. Mahomes does a lot. There's another thing where I think he clearly knew he couldn't run because a guy would hit him. So he was like holding on to the play, which benefited him on the next drive where he's throwing across his body. And it just kind of got him into no man's land. And then you are playing just elite athletes on the other side, and one of the best defenses in the league now for several years. So when the guy tips it to himself, while still an incredible play, it's like you put yourself in that situation. And this is what I think that Kyle harps on and this offense harps on, that there's a fine balance of, like, you're allowed to kind of go Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen every once in a while. But if our whole offense is based on that, it kind of falls apart. And that's where it felt like there's been a little disconnect today, as he just kind of went rogue. And that's when I really lost faith. I mean, once he threw the pick in the baby zone, I mean, I don't know about you. I thought the game was over.
Yeah.
And then obviously the next pick comes pretty quick, and it's just,
and then Jamar Chase scores on the next play, and they're down 24-10. And then they put together, he comes out, hits McCaffrey for 9, throws a gorgeous 15-yard ball to the sideline to Ayuk. Throws a nice pass to Kittle that Kittle drops, runs all around, gets Kittle on third down, and then kind of does it again and hits McCaffrey. Like, this is not.
You think Kittle knew he was going to get lit up on that play?
Yeah.
Because he kind of went like this after. Don't blame him. I'm not acting like I want to go over the middle either.
And he's got to, I know. It goes to show, like, even the toughest guys. But it's not glass half full day, obviously. 2 weeks in a row, he's been part of the reason they lost. But I did think that, like, that's part of the reason I'm like, I'm not going to Sam Darnold at this point because of that, because the way he bounced back after those 2 picks was pretty impressive. But whatever. I mean, you can't people lose their shit if you say that today, but it's the fact. Like, he does a lot of top 15 quarterback stuff, and he also does stuff that top 5 quarterbacks do well, and he can't always do it because his arm strength is different. Like, that's part of it too. But the other thing, can I just add this too? I want your take on this. The second week in a row, he's thrown a pick in the middle of the field where he was really anticipating something, right? And is that a problem? Like, does he have to throw it earlier than most guys because of his arm? And is that a problem? Because his arm lacks some strength.
I would say it's not a problem, but it is his liability, right? Part of being Drew Brees or Peyton Manning, I think Phillip Rivers said this, like, the reason I have to get the ball out early, because I don't. That's the only way the ball is going to get there, and it has to be accurate. Like the only way I can succeed, right? I mean, you see the Josh Allens who can be a little hit or miss, but they can also make plays that those guys don't have in the bag outside of the pocket. That's what's unique about Brock is usually with those anticipatory average arm strength, at least in our lifetime, right? In our like adult last 20 years, it's been a lot of immobile guys. So it's just like Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, like kind of that whole crew. Obviously, Peyton was the best version. There was no moving. I mean, there was a little couple yard radius in which they slid, but Brock will move. So Brock does have an element that those guys, historically the type players, if he's good, he'll compare to. Even what Cousins became. I actually think Cousins' arm got a little stronger as he got older. I would imagine the lifting, the training, definitely, if it was baseball, he came in the league throwing like 91. And by the time he hit his prime, he was throwing like 94. You know, he was never 98, but he was not throwing 90, 91. And I wonder if Brock's arm would naturally get a little stronger, but he's going to be an anticipatory thrower. And, you know, what really, Phillip Rivers turned the ball over a lot. And that was, wouldn't you say, his main downfall, why he could never go to the top tier. I would say when Drew Brees was in his heyday and he had fantastic seasons, they were pretty good not giving the ball to the other team, throwing picks. And obviously Peyton Manning was the same. But also both those guys, like Brock when he was on, would light up the scoreboard. The other thing is that it was not sustainable to go as long as he did without picks, right? It's what the numbers guy would say. This is an outlier. It's going to come back to the mean. How do you come back to the mean? Do you throw a pick in the first quarter of a 7-3 game? Or do you throw a pick down 7 with 7 minutes left and you're like, at max, there's only 2 more possessions in the game? So to me, that matters. You could throw a pick a game. When does it come? Is it always coming in the second half? Because you can't overcome that. The Chiefs were turning the ball over today every single possession, and they were still in the game for a large percentage of it.
Yeah. Brees,
he's had back-to-back fourth quarter picks. I would say if we did a study on one-score games, fourth quarter picks, you lose 90% of the time. I mean, have to be pretty high.
Yeah, I would imagine you're playing. You know, part of that it might be a little bit self-fulfilling because I bet you're trailing. Like, do the majority of fourth quarter interceptions come from trailing quarterbacks? I don't know, right? On this team, definitely, right? Because on this team, if you're leading in the fourth quarter, you are running the rock, and they're not in a position to do it right now. Like the whole thing is, it all feeds
run game. Run game's not as dominant either right now. I mean, they're not exactly cruising in. If you remove Brock's scrambles,
and that might be more than in the pass protection where you miss Trent.
This is way down on the list of things to complain about.
Oh, no.
But Elijah Mitchell pretty quickly just passed Mason. Did Mason show up to a meeting late or something?
Well, Mason, they got to conserve Mason for special teams, Johnny. Almost had that punt block. Hey, how about the kick that almost went out of bounds today? What was that?
That's your classic.
Bengals bailed out Moody on that kick.
Big time. Why did he grab it?
I don't know.
Why did that guy grab it? That's your classic. This return, man, we're acting like the guy's fucking Deion Sanders back there. What are we doing? Every kick, the majority, 99% of these guys in the league are are just normal kick returners. If you just kick it and have decent coverage, you tackle them somewhere between, I don't know, the 22 and the 28, and everything's fine. To try to do your classic, and you always harp on this, and it's so true. What do these guys really have to do they can't just play golf all the time. So they got to meet, pretend they're doing something. Hey, this guy 7 weeks ago had this unreal return when he caught it on the left side. So if we kick to the right side, I actually don't think he's as good. And then that ball goes out of bounds. I mean, that returner is going to get yelled at on Monday or Tuesday for that. Right?
Might have got yelled at 10 minutes after. I mean, immediately afterwards.
Yeah, he probably did. I assuming that's a scheme thing and not bounced off the wrong part of his foot, that's inexcusable. Here's the problem, though. and this is the thing with Kyle. They have so many issues right now. The defense is just a bigger picture issue than that, but they've done that a couple times. Like that's something, just a small little detail where I don't even know if Kyle's paying attention because he despises special teams, where he goes, cut that shit out. Just fucking aim it at the uprights and let her rip every time. That's why we drafted this kid in the 3rd round, and he makes more than Purdy.
I don't know.
As Bo Nix told Fowler, Bo Nix, he's like, yeah, I'm making somewhere between $2 and $3 million. So clearly he was trying to be humble. He's making 3.2. He's making 3x what Purdy's making.
Yeah, I mean, some people would argue right now that's the only difference between Brock and Garoppolo, is that Brock's cheap. Now, I disagree.
I don't think there are that many people arguing that, are there?
I think today Brock is getting a lot of, this is just, here we go. For years, Middlecoff killed Jimmy for the lack of physical attributes, and here we are propping up a short cherub QB who has no arm. I think there's a lot of
he averaged almost 12 yards a pass today.
They averaged more yards per play than the Bengals did today, I think. Let me check.
Well, yeah, I mean they
did.
Brock pushes the ball downfield, and here's the other thing Brock does.
They average 8 yards.
He averages almost 10 yards a rush. Brock does things dramatically better than Jimmy, but also is that the bar? Like we're comparing him to Jimmy Garoppolo? Like that's a pretty low bar. I mean, ultimately they're rooting for Brock to be a top 10 quarterback, not just middle of the road. They're hoping Brock will be a sustainable guy that, let's face it, even if you're not Burrow or Mahomes or Herbert or Hurts, there aren't really a lot of, the reason Derek got $60 million, he's just a free agent, got cut. There aren't many like, oh yeah, Brock they can give him that 3-year, $60 million deal in 2 years. That deal doesn't exist if you want to keep the quarterback, if you're having success. So that's what you got to, they got to figure that out. Now, I was telling someone the other day, it's so stupid to when they got to pay this guy, whenever we play that game, and it's like, this is the guy's 2nd year in the league. Like, you're still several years. Do we see what happens in 2 years of NFL football? Urban Meyer didn't even make it through. I think how fast things ebb and flow. Last year, the Giants in the playoffs. This year, they're 2-6. They just had a quarterback, Danny DeVito's cousin, throw for -8 yards. I think Kyle Brandt tweeted, is this possibly the worst game in NFL history? I did the math. I think it was 4 of 34, 4 of 38 on 3rd down. It was pretty ugly there in MetLife.
What did Nance say? How many penalties were there in the first half? Or he said something. There was something. I can tell you this: the two teams combined to go 4 for 34 on 3rd down. 4 for 34 on 3rd down. What stat did you say you did the math on?
That was the one. That
was the one.
Giants game, right?
Okay, yeah. Where's the? Nance said something crazy in the first half. Maybe all there were 15 penalties. Yeah. Anyway, Jets are 4-3. Jets are 1 game worse than the Niners in the win column. Same number. Jets have 3 losses. Niners have 3 losses.
I think someone asked Saul after the game about this has to feel good for Woody Johnson or something. And he's like, yeah, it's got to be special now to be the king of New York.
He knows the assignment.
I still have a soft spot for when several injuries happen to a quarterback room and you get to a position like quarterback, by far the most famous position. College quarterbacks all over the place are pretty famous. Even random guys like DJ Ungule, just transfers that are going to be undrafted free agents. And it's like the Giants are playing with who? Tommy DeVito? Did you know who Tommy DeVito is?
Nope.
And he's not alone.
He's played before.
He's not alone. The Badgets, the DeVitos. You think you'll just get to, whoever, the Jackson Dart or whatever. No, that group of guys doesn't make it, and the DeVitos and the whatever this Bears guy's name somehow beat that guy out.
Who's the Patriots backup?
Zappy.
Yeah, Bailey Zappy. Texas. Can Texas get a backup quarterback? Alabama. Can any of these Alabama guys get in the league? Florida.
So DeVito, Syracuse, and he was Illinois starting quarterback last year.
Okay, all right. So I do remember him from college.
Yeah, so we would have watched him play. I would not have, if you would have said $1 million, get the right conference. I don't think I would have picked a Power 5 conference.
I wouldn't. No, I would not have either.
I probably would have said D1 AA. Jimmy Garoppolo school, or University of San Diego, or maybe a smaller school in the Northeast. DeVito, Italian guy.
Jimmy Garoppolo school sounded right. New Hampshire.
He's from Jersey, so.
Yeah,
I mean, this guy. Think about this.
A photo of him with a big TD necklace. They said it's the most Italian necklace a quarterback's ever been pictured wearing.
This player. Think about this. Like the Purdys of the world, DeVito has career in college. How many starts? Game played. I mean, I don't think he has that many starts. 39. He played like 10 years.
That's a lot of starts. I mean, Bo Nix is the longest, it set a record for the most games for a college player. I think it's like 54, 55.
Tommy DeVito was an undrafted free agent this year. He's 25 years old.
So he was in college for. You going on a mission?
A long
enlisted in the military? Where was he?
He came 2017. It was his freshman year.
Was he in the Army? Somebody in the chat, I lost it here, said this is just the same season every year for the Niners. I mean,
it did feel different, I would say, through 5 games.
Well, yeah,
it wasn't going to be that easy. Clearly, once you lose a game, it's a good humbling experience. It did not feel. We said it during training camp, during the winning. This felt like a 13-14 win team. Now it's like, are they actually closer to be a 10-11 win team?
Well, they're the only 3-loss team in the NFC right now. Okay. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 teams that have less than 3 losses. Philly, Seattle.
Lions have not played this week.
Yeah, but John, they play the Raiders. And then there's there's 1, 2, 3, 4-loss teams: Minnesota, New Orleans, Tampa. You play Tampa later.
Before I forget, I think I either Glazer or Schefter, one of those morning show nuggets being thrown out there. Raiders had a players-only closed-door meeting this week to kind of air out some stuff.
Well, if I told you it doesn't feel like watching.
Fuck, they need it. Yeah, I'm not even hating.
They're about to have one, but it feels like they could use one. I don't know what they're going to say. We hate the DC. Yeah, me too. AFC. More AFC teams have more losses. So, like, most of the AFC has the same number or fewer losses than the Niners. Yeah, they're just,
obviously they've had their bye, so they're
4-3.
Well, they're 4-3, and the Niners are 5-3. Who's a better team right now, the Bengals or the Niners?
Bengals. Well, did you hear what the Romo stat was, or Nance? One of them said
obviously they just played, but I'm just saying if they played 10 times the way they're trending right now, it feels like the Bengals would win 8.
Yeah, I mean
7,
the Bengals. Feel like the Bengals are the 9 seed right now. They look like one of the two, probably one to me. Are they this like they feel like a top 2 team in the AFC right now?
How about that stat that Nance said that they swept the NFC West?
They did, yeah. The Ravens won today, right? How the
Ravens won, today? The Browns lost and the Steelers lost.
All right. So the Ravens and the Bengals are now because they came in, it was the only division in football where everybody was on a 2-game winning streak. How about the stat that they had the fewest explosives in the league entering play?
Well, because remember the first couple of weeks when he was injured, their offense sucked. This team, it'd be like watching the Warriors, like in their prime, go through a bad 2-week stretch where they just didn't hit or 2-game stretch. No one hit a 3. Like, what's up with this team? It's like, no, I just had a couple bad games. Maybe we know a guy has a tight hammy or something. Then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, you're watching them. They hit 80% of their threes in like 2 games, and they just annihilate people. You're like, yeah, this is the actual. Because that's the other thing that the Bengals have, right? Like they have a resume. Like we've seen them for 2 years play the big boys and go toe to toe. They were fucking winning the Super Bowl.
They kind of play the same seasons that the Niners play. Like every year in the Bengals season and the Niners season, there's like this moment where it's like, is it going to fall apart?
I think it feels better as a fan because if you just assume neither are going to win the Super Bowl, you sleep better knowing it's like, just carry us on his back, even if our coaches have an off day. When it's like Kyle has to carry us.
I also think it feels better when you start slow. What do you mean? Because it's just so much harder for an offensive coach to carry you. Defensive coach maybe can do it a little better.
I think if we got a group of 10 diehard Bengals fans, they would not be pounding the table. I think they have to respect Zach Taylor. They've won a lot of games with him, and he hired, Coach Lou, which you get credit for that, right? Like, he brought that guy as his defensive coordinator.
Kyle's calling out his DC 6 weeks into the season. That's on him too.
Yeah, like, how did Steve Wilks get here? Jed just found him on the street. No, I mean, Kyle's the one that fucking interviewed and hired him.
Got him in the draft. I mean, he was the best one available. What can I say?
Yeah, we had 2 guys there. We just, pulled it out of a name out of a hat and went with that. No, it's like, Kyle, you guys were
league assigned him.
Are they getting cute? Let's be real on that one too. So it's like, I don't know, man. I just think that I don't expect him to get fired, but if I get an Adam Schefter alert or an athletic alert on my phone, it wouldn't be jaw-dropping like the day John Lynch has been hired as the general manager or the 49ers have traded for Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
It'd be crazy because, like, what are they going to do? But I would say it's crazy to say. It's crazy to say it's on the table.
Trade for Belichick before the deadline? Is there a DC out there you could trade for? Ever been done?
Can DeMeco just come back?
Well, no, DeMeco.
They win today?
No, I think they. I mean, they wouldn't have lost to the Panthers, right? They did. They lost to the Panthers, 15-13.
Didn't watch. I haven't seen a highlight. Seen one snap. Couldn't tell you one thing about that game.
Same.
You think a lot of people were watching that game?
No. Yeah, I don't know what their move is here at this point. But Surtain, go all in. I mean, maybe, yeah. I mean, it's, that would be the question. Do they do something they weren't going to do 2 days ago? Do they do something they weren't going to do if they had won this game that looks desperate at the trade deadline? Be interesting. Could, right?
I mean, clearly Tim was working the sidelines. He tweeted out, he knows these people pretty well.
Oh, okay.
He had a tweet that kind of went viral on my Instagram account, all the aggregators.
Uh-huh.
Something of the effect of just they're going to be live over these next couple days. It's the buzz pregame.
I'm going to seek out a comment tomorrow. I'll ask him. Rex Ryan, Dante Whitner, John Lynch. Yeah, I mean, it is, I'll tell you this. It's not a quote unquote turning point in the Kyle Shanahan era, but this is a big moment for Kyle, right? You have a championship level roster. Everybody thinks it's a championship level roster. What ends up happening at this point defines this season. I mean, you can only.
I want to do Tim's tweet justice. A buzz from pregame is that the Niners are definitely live for 1 or 2 potential trades. Win or losses today by key potential sellers to either stay or mostly drop off in the playoff races will be key. But buzz from pregame is definitely live. Like you said, they have bought this team. I mean, it's not like just because you lose 3 games, you were thinking you were going to try to win the Super Bowl a month ago. They're not necessarily changing. They just got to figure out how to get a win. But the team, the players that you were winning with are still around. It's not like you lost 3 guys with devastating knee injuries.
I do think there's something to be said for it felt like multiple times in the game, last week, the week before, you're just trying to get like 4 things in a row to go right to kind of jumpstart. And they got that fumble. They kind of got fired up when they thought they got the Jamar Chase fumble. It feels like they're waiting for something to just break their way, right? The Bengals get like no penalty, like nothing's breaking their way. And that
I hate that with good teams though. Don't you create that?
No, I know. Let me be clear. I'm not saying they're getting like screwed or they're getting bad luck. Like you got to push the envelope. But as you know, John, it is human. No matter how good sometimes you just need a jump start, and they're not giving themselves that jump start right now, even though they should. They got the players. They were at home today, right? They weren't on the road like they were the last 2 weeks. They were at home. It felt you should be able to do it. But I mean, last year they got McCaffrey, and he was kind of a for them, right? Now, part of it is an excellent player. Like, that's really what it is. You hear it all the time in baseball. Like, man, he came across, he walked in the locker room. That's they need. I think it feels to them like they're under an avalanche right now, and they need something to go their way. And you're right. You got to pull yourself up. You got to do it yourself. But
yeah, I mean, I think one big picture thing. I know he's made a play here or there, but for the level in which they're paying him, I think this season, for a guy that's just half naked all over all of our Instagram feeds, it's been a disappointing season for Nick Bosa. It really has.
You have to believe you don't hold out as part of why we're here, right? I know.
Yeah, I mean,
PFF has him number 2, and Romo said when you watch, he's one of the best pass rushers. He still makes plays, but he's not anywhere near the highest paid defensive player in the history of the NFL.
But the other thing is, it's so easy just if they're playing at 130 to flip around the games. You're like Hassan Reddick flying all over the place. You're like, Jesus, Myles Garrett, is this guy a human? TJ Watt picking balls, tipping them to himself, tackling a guy with one arm, catching the ball in the other hand. It's like, who are these guys? And it felt like Nick used to do that shit, and now he just seems like a good defensive player.
Yeah. Doesn't feel like anyone's getting.
You watch the Niners, at least Fred flies around like you feel Fred. I just don't feel Nick.
Fred. You do feel Fred.
You do not feel Nick Bosa. They paid him all this money, which he had earned. Part of getting broken off. Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, those guys, Aaron Donald immediately lived up to the hype. And I think we get back to the training camp. There's clearly a disconnect.
Yep. I agree. Vikings got to 4-4, but Kirk got hurt. Devastating for them. Jets somehow are 4-3. Solid coach of the year. Eagles, we mentioned that. They trailed. They were down to the Commodores. Won the game. Broncos beat the Chiefs today. Does that matter to you? Chiefs are now 6-2. First, Jeff Schwartz tweeted at us. What was it? The first road loss, AFC West road loss in Mahomes' career? Was that the stat?
Yeah.
I would have thought it would have happened in Oakland or Vegas, but I guess not. Ravens had a comeback win today. I mean, they weren't, they were down, 7-0, I think, early in that game. 10-0, not 10-0, 7-0.
Yeah.
Ran away with that one. Browns, man. Seahawks. Could the Seahawks win the NFC West?
100%. Niners could lose their next game. Is that game in Jacksonville or in San Francisco?
Jacksonville. I know. Man. It's like they're not. They got to earn their way out of it. Ravens, Seahawks next week. Yeah.
Cowboys, Eagles too.
Cowboys, Eagles next week?
Yeah.
Week 9? What's our Thursday night game? Titans, Steelers. Will Levis.
4 touchdowns.
Cannon. Did you say Dolphins, Chiefs next week? I'm looking at it. Dolphins, Chiefs. Seahawks, Ravens. Wow.
Good. The Niners just fucking
Giants, Raiders. That'll be. That's the lock in on that.
DeVito.
You know what the Monday night game is? Chargers, Jets. Oh, and Sunday night is Bills, Bengals. So Bills, Bengals, Cowboys, Eagles, Dolphins, Chiefs, Seahawks, Ravens. It's legit.
Feels like the best week of the year so far.
It does. Niners, Lions, Broncos, Jags on buys.
Niners need to go lick some wounds, fire some people, and get their shit together.
I love. Who would they hire at DC? Wade Phillips?
I don't fuck him. Who knows?
Like, seriously, that list right now is just probably weird.
Yeah, you couldn't hire outside. You're kind of stuck.
So, all right. Anything else on that note?
No.
All right. Thanks for hanging, everybody. Adios. Have a good week.